That's good.
He's
Hear him, I
like-
can't, you know, all this
Yeah,
stuff.
we're gonna try to have somebody there, but if we can't have somebody there, which means that
Does
we
this
won't
need
have somebody
signed?
there, but please, that's fine, I guess.
Lori.
Lori,
On that CG, the trailer,
Lori,
I just printed off the rate sheet. so
you're supposed to sign that one.
edit.
Oh, sorry.
All right, I will now call the September meeting of the Board of Education to order. I believe, welcome all our guests, thank you for attending. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, the same. Agenda is approved. All right, looks like we have two for open forum. We were debating up here what the time length on open forum is. It's been years since we've done one, but we're gonna go with 5 minutes tonight on the time length for open forum. So that's not setting a precedent in case it's something shorter than that. Tonight, we're gonna do 5 minutes. So first up, Aaron. Aaron Backus.
Oh, okay,
You're-
can we, I kind of want to hear what your guys' discussion is.
That's not the way it operates.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know. Can I go first? Is that fine?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
All right, my name's Melissa Massman. Most of you guys probably know me. I've lived here forever. So with the bus situation, for years it's been that students could be dropped off at St. George for their after-school religious program. They ride the bus, they get dropped off there. We know they get there. If they're not there, they call us and say, hey, your kid's not here, where are they? Then as parents, we figure out where our kids went. So this year it's been changed that they cannot get dropped off there. We have to pick them up out here, or I have to have my kids ride the bus home and then find somebody else to get them and take them there, which if you do the traffic here, you know how bad that is. So I'm just advocating that for the parents that want to send their kids there, that we could still have the buses drop them there, because it's safer for them. I mean, case in point, yesterday, one of my kids got left here, one went home, he's 6, was frantic because nobody was with him. If they could ride the bus, they would have been dropped off at St. George, and we wouldn't have been trying to figure out, okay, why is this kid here when he wasn't given permission to stay here? And the other one at home frantic because nobody's there with him. So I mean, I'm just advocating that the kids could still ride their bus, get dropped off at St. George. For my kids, it's not a bus change, it's just Linwood versus St. George. I mean, for other parents, it might be a different situation, but that's my big thing. I would like for that to still be an option. So I would like for you guys to consider that.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Aaron?
My name's Erin Backus. Melissa happens to be my sister-in-law, but we are both in the same situation. My kids got dropped off the first week of school at St. George. Never been a problem thus far. My oldest is in 10th grade. My middle child is in 8th grade, and my youngest is in 4th grade. This whole time they've been in public school, it's never been an issue for them to be dropped off at St. George after school on Wednesdays. The second week, I get a phone call from my child on the bus saying that they can't get off at the stop that they were planning on getting off at. They had to go home. So I called the director at St. George telling him that my kids would not be there. And I was told, is Melissa gonna go pick up your children? Well, first of all, they're not her responsibility. I shouldn't have to ask somebody to come pick up my child and take them where I need them to be. Growing up, I grew up in Texas. We didn't have any family around. Luckily, I do have family, but like I said, it's not their responsibility for them to get my kids where they need to be. And I cannot take off work for an hour on Wednesday afternoons to come out here, sit in the line to get them to the after-school program that they need to be at. So, like I said, I'm in the same boat as Melissa. Just wanted you guys to consider keeping that program or that bus situation going.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the minutes?
I move we approve the consent agenda in the minutes.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Any corrections or discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, the same. Can I get a motion to approve the transfer and payment of bills?
I move we approve the transfer and payment of bills.
I'll second.
All right, any questions about bills?
I didn't see.
Didn't see anything.
Okay. Only comment, I saw you rented a brake that goes on a skid steer. Next time you need one, it's a couple $100, I think, but we've got one over.
Oh,
We've got
we
one over
did.
at State Tech if you ever need to borrow
I
one.
thought you said brake.
Rake, yeah.
A rake, yeah. We're gonna have one, actually Ag is gonna build us a rakerator, is
Mhm.
what they made that.
Sure.
Or what they call that, Terry
Okay.
Shepherd's gonna do that for us.
Cool. All right. Got a motion, a second, no further discussion. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, the same. All right, reports, elementary.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to start off with culture. Lynn Elementary is off to a great start. Staff got to enjoy Kurt's Donuts on September 6th thanks to our awesome PTO. We want to thank them for supporting our staff and students in any way they can. They've recently added some new pieces of equipment to our playground, which we're so excited about, and a big thank you to maintenance for helping get that prepared. Also, we just wanted to let everyone know our open house and wellness fair were a success again this year. We love welcoming everyone back into our hallways. Our enrollment's up a little bit, about 284 right now. And also, teachers and staff have really done a nice job of embracing our building-wide theme of intentional adventures. It's been fun to see all of the awesome bulletin boards in the classrooms decorated in that theme, and really just focus on being intentional in everything that we do this year. And also, a big thank you to maintenance. Our building looks wonderful, and they've done a nice job to help us welcome families back, so we appreciate that. Under instruction, I have a couple of pieces. The first is math data. So this presentation is to present where our students are currently performing. We're gonna look at a lot of data, and I'll show it to you in a couple ways. For grades 4 and 5, we'll look at cohort data first, and then we'll look at grade level data comparing the two different groups. We also know that some of this data is not going to be the most comfortable to look at, but when you leave this presentation, we hope you understand our goals to address some of these areas in the future, and some of these plans are already in place. So we'll start with the 3rd grade data. Here you're going to see the grade level comparisons. 3rd grade didn't take the math test, and 2nd grade starts in 3rd, so that's why you don't have the cohort data here. So looking at the grade level, we were up about 7 students last year, and we stayed about the same for ELA. We were proficient in advanced at 40% for that. It's important to remember when looking at this data, not every class is the same. So while this is just comparing the grade level, it's not comparing the same students from year to year. And then for math, in 2023, we were at 30% proficient in advanced, and last year we went up to 46% proficient in advanced. So we saw quite the jump there. Our 3rd grade team worked really hard. They looked at different aspects of their curriculum and how they could improve it, and their hard work paid off. So we're very proud. Okay, when we look at 4th grade data, here we are going to start with the cohort comparison. So that's comparing the same group of kids. So how they scored in 3rd grade versus how they scored in 4th. So if you see the yellow highlighted areas, that's going to be our percent that was advanced and proficient for ELA, but I wanted to show you the different breakdowns too for each category. Now, this one I'm going to focus a little bit more on for 4th grade because it's important to remember these are our kids who were our COVID babies, and so I think that's important to note there. So the first thing I want to talk about here is if you look at the below basic percentages for 2023 and 2024, we moved a lot of kids that were below basic over to basic. So that's a pretty good jump, and we're very, very thankful for that. Also, if you look at the amount of kids who went from proficient to advanced, from 23 to 24, we saw a pretty decent increase there too. So while our overall percentage for ELA in 4th grade was down 3%, which with their amount of students, that equals about 1 student who went down. They did a really good job moving some of those below basic kids over to basic and those proficient kids over to advanced. And I think that they worked really hard to do that. This is going to be the 4th grade ELA comparison when you're looking at the group of students, or sorry, not the same group of students, but the grade level comparison. So how 4th graders in the 2023 school year compared to the 2024 school year. So we did see a decrease there, but again, different group of students, and the group in 2024 did have significantly more students.
It was about 4
Than the
students.
year before.
That equates to about 4,
Yes.
46 to 37.
Which again, we had quite the jump in kids in that grade level. Up next, you're gonna see the 4th grade cohort comparison for math. So in yellow is gonna be the percentage that was advanced and proficient on the math test. We actually went up 1% in this grade level. Again, that's the same group of kids who tested in 3rd grade and then in 4th. So you can see here that even with a big jump in math, we saw those scores slightly rise. Not, again, the data is not exactly where we would like to see it, but we're headed in the right direction. This is the 4th grade math scores, and this is the grade level comparison. So we went down about 4% when you're looking at the grade level comparison, but again, that's not looking at the same group of kids. Okay, our 5th grade data. This is our cohort comparison, so how they scored in 4th grade and then how they scored in 5th grade. It's also broken down again for you in the different categories below basic, proficient, and advanced. We did see a decrease of 8% in this cohort, which amounts to about 2 students. We're really working to look at what's written, taught, and tested to see kind of why that might have been, because when you do look at the amount of kids in that grade level, which I'll show you on the next slide, we did have less kids last year, so we're working hard to figure out why we might have seen that decrease.
Looks like we split the proficient in between dropping to basic and going to advanced.
Yes. And so here you'll see the grade level comparison, but again, they did have significantly less kids last year, so we're really looking to see why that might have been, and really looking over the different resources we're using. And then also, as I'm gonna mention later, we're gonna really look at that item analysis and look at depth of knowledge levels and see why that might have been. This is the math cohort comparison for the 5th grade group when they were in 4th grade and 5th grade. Again, this area was down 2%, which again with their numbers was about less than 1 student. So we're just, again, working to see all that we can do to see those scores rise. This is the math comparison for the grade level. So as you can see, it only dropped about 1% there, but we will continue working on that and trying to figure out why we saw those drops. Now, for science, we won't have the cohort comparison, even though they're in 5th grade, because 5th grade is the first time they take the science test. So one thing that we really looked at, because we did see a decrease here when I've been meeting with the team, is we looked at the standards and what grade level was responsible for each of those standards. So we're looking through that item analysis to figure out how we can see that rise again, since that was a significant decrease there. And I know the 5th grade team is also looking at different resources to use there. All right, so we have several plans, several of which are already in place, and if they're not in place, they're gonna be in place very soon to help improve and lead to student success. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're continuing to revise and build our curriculum. The teachers worked really hard this summer to redo their scope and sequence and make sure we were hitting all of the standards and fitting it within the timeline of the year. So they've started that work and will continue it throughout the year. We also have started to talk and will continue to talk a lot about depth of knowledge levels. So we found some great documents from the state that let us know what level each standard will be assessed at. That way we can make sure we're hitting that depth of knowledge level when we're teaching it to them in class. Again, as I mentioned before, we're going to be looking at item analysis and come up with plans to implement to address the missing skills. So the first thing we'll look at is any standard that our students scored 0 to 39% in. We'll start there, we'll really target those standards and figure out the depth of knowledge level and what else we can do to address that need. Then, after we are done with that, so we'll do about 2 or 3 standards a week per grade level that's map tested. We'll start looking at those standards that students scored between 40 and 50% in, and we'll start tackling those standards and seeing what we need to do to address those gaps. We also are starting RTI time daily for K through 2 will have a certain time and 3 through 5 will have a certain time. We are working with Dr. Joe Brown again, and those will start early October. And those are really gonna target those specific skills that our kids are missing. We'll look at data from MAP, from iReady, evaluate last year, and also our DIBELS to form those groups. So we'll take kind of a average of all of those and then figure out what skills our kids need to start at, and that will be personalized to their level. We're also still working on using cooperative learning strategies to increase student engagement and get them really in charge of their learning as we move forward. Another thing we've been looking at is exploring options for different curriculum resources that we could try to pilot to try to fill some of those gaps as well. Right now, teachers are creating their curriculum, and so we're really gonna focus on trying to explore more options for those resources to pilot, and really try to get that common language going from grade level to grade level. Then with iReady, we also have a really awesome thing happening this year, and it's called iReady Individualized Pathways. So the kids took their diagnostic this week, and based on where they scored on their diagnostic, it will give them individual lessons to work on each day where they're at, and then the rigor will increase as they move forward. And it will also alert the teacher if the child is struggling with the lesson several times. It will give them a flag, and the teacher will know that's a skill they need to go back over with that child. And then everything so far has really been focused on instruction, but one thing we're doing to help our environment this year is both of us admin have mobile desks. So we're trying to be out of the office as much as possible, in classrooms, in the hallway, and I think if we help the teachers and staff with the environment, then that's really gonna play big into letting them do what they need to do and provide quality instruction to students. So we've gotten really good feedback from that so far, and good feedback from the kids too. They've really enjoyed that. Are there any questions on the math data before I move into my next piece on instruction?
I appreciate you showing year over year and then cohort data as well, because it's interesting to see both of them.
Yeah, and I
When
think
it's available.
Yes, I think when it's available, it's really, that's the data we really need to be looking at, because that's the same group of kids. And so it's a little bit more easy for us to fine tune what we need for those specific groups versus a whole grade level.
Mhm. It's also hard when you've got a one grade, 1 year there's 40 some odd kids and then the next year's 27. I mean, that's really hard to compare
Absolutely.
apples to apples, because I think, so what I'm drawn to then is I'm immediately going to be looking at who's below, and sometimes those numbers, the percentage, you're like, oh, that's a big percentage, and then you're like, oh, that's 6 kids. I mean, that's still where we need to improve, but like when you look at it that way, I mean, the majority is basic or above, and that's good. So
Absolutely. So we're really working on me as a leader giving the teacher that data early on in the year, and let's focus on how we can get that up, and really looking at each individual standard. And we had a lot of good discussions around depth of knowledge too during our summer session. We had a presenter come in and she gave us a lot of resources to look at, so we can try to help with that depth of knowledge if that's part of our gap.
Appreciate your presentation. That's well done, very clear. I also appreciate the fact that it is a goal of ours to add more rigor to what we're doing, and the goal of ours to review the depth of knowledge, of course. I would be interested in seeing something more very specific and data-driven regarding those two items, though,
Okay.
at some point in
Yeah,
time.
absolutely.
Like maybe a SMART goal-oriented thing, if such a term is even used anymore. But I
Yeah,
think that's the
absolutely.
two most important things you can be focusing on, and you are, and that's, but from my standpoint, yeah, that's clearly where we need to be looking. We need to be adding rigor to our curriculum, absolutely positively, in this district, and I appreciate your efforts in doing so.
Perfect, thank you. And I really appreciate our teachers' efforts, who are, they're really trying to better the lives of our students and make them successful, and I really appreciate all the hard work they're putting in. They've done a nice job.
You mentioned engagement of students. The classrooms are most successful, the highest test scores in classrooms, statistically, data will show that it's the educators who engage more. It's like, that's clear and obvious, so like we can't focus on that enough as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, I agree. Any other questions on the data?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. There's just a couple other things I wanted to share with you. The first is, again, we kicked off our iReady assessment on September 10th. Last week we focused on ELA. This week we focused on math. Students will have, again, those individualized pathways. The other thing that we're implementing this year is they are only testing for 30-minute increments. That way we can make sure they're giving their best on those to get the individualized pathways really, truly where they are. iReady also does a really good job. The feedback I got from students last week and this week was iReady does a really good job of building in those breaks as they're testing. If they notice that the student is clicking through the questions too fastly, they'll put a break in there, and that really helps our students get back focused. So that has been nice. The other thing I wanted to share with you is we are monitoring our attendance on our bulletin board again outside the front office, so I encourage you to check that out. We will post weekly percentages for each grade level, and then the top 3 classes have some sort of celebration that they decide on in their classroom to try to encourage students to get here. And then this year, the office is also monitoring those percentages on a Google Sheet, and we are watching for changes in trends to see if there's anything else that we can do to get that attendance up. Then I just wanted to let everyone know and invite everyone to a couple of our upcoming events. Our Title I night is going to be October 3rd. And it's going to be a master reader theme. So that's going to be new this year, and we're really excited to kick off the year with something new for kids and get them excited about reading. Thank you so much to Melanie Brandt and Beth Plume for their hard work on planning this event. And then Grandparents' Day and Food for America Day will be October 4th, so we hope everyone can come out and join us for that. And then the last event I wanted to remind you of is the PTO Fall Festival, which is coming up on October 19th from 4 to 7. So we hope to see everybody there and come out and have a good time.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent report.
All right, start off with, as usual, with culture, climate, and relationships. As most of you know, we started off with Phil Boyd this year. Been really focused on a lot of campus and district opportunities to do that. Probably, I was hoping to get in an event at my house October 5th. We couldn't get the band lined up, so probably shooting for the 2nd or 3rd weekend in October. I think I told you in my report, we like to eat and laugh together. Music's always a good time also. And we'll be doing our Christmas party, looking forward to that. The other thing, actually, we've been in planning for quite a while, Robin Baker and Student Council has. We do intend to do a on-campus homecoming parade for our homecoming this Friday, so that'll be not this Friday, but next Friday. So we're gonna send out some information to the community, because we would like them to participate in that as well. Think shopping cart parade, small time floats, but we want it to be something that we can grow in the future for our kids, and hopefully, someday we'll have it on Main Street. Personnel and staffing still continuing to monitor for our 2 ELA and business positions. Benefit update, Mercy Healthcare has not signed an agreement with our healthcare provider, and so that'll terminate on 12/31. It's that time of year where they're renegotiating. That'll be in the spring, well, actually kind of winter. Professional development, of course, we've had our first Monday conferences. We're sending folks out to, I'll be at conference, Mr. Wilson will be at the MSPMA, and then we also had a Central Missouri MASA in an effort to create a Central Missouri MASA. We've only had South Central and some others. We've never had a truly Central Missouri. Facilities continuing bond activity, some of which will be later. Other than that, it's pretty typical things for this kind of time of year. I have quite a few in-season teams. Volleyball, big win over Fatima. That is amazing. It's first time in 17 years. Softball is rolling. I think we just finished up at 9-0 or so, Southern Moon. First varsity football game, and we've had our second, and then I'll have our second away tomorrow. Limited Invitational was a good turnout, 21 high schools, 13 middle schools, and gotten a lot of good feedback on our band and choir programs. And I know Neil Johnson had reached out about doing a piece for our directors. On the budget and finance side, I'm sure you've seen the recent article headline about the mistake on personal property. That went from a $5.5 million reduction to a little over $200,000. I haven't gotten any updated numbers or received updated numbers from the clerk's office yet, but Brooke Dudneffer's been really responsive, and I anticipate getting those. So we'll have little to no drop, and we'll be about exactly what we predicted there. So we'll go about a $1.65 million gain in a non-assessment year. Other than that, we have the audit coming up, and we think we'll do as well as we have the last couple of years.
Very good. Any questions?
I had, with the reports, what is the kind of guidelines for high school report and other administration?
So typically we do it about every other month. So it'll be high school, then middle school, or sorry, high school, then elementary, high school, then elementary. Athletics, the beginning and the end of season. So when fall starts, we'll get a general update, but when fall ends and we begin winter, we'll put a cap on fall and give a kind of a preview into winter. And then technology is once or twice a year, and special education is once or twice a year. And with Mr. Wilson, we just haven't been doing as much with him, especially since we've got the bond coming up. So unless there's something in particular that you guys want him to speak to, and it's maintenance.
In the past, we've had, for like high school, for instance, when they spoke every meeting, pretty much, they usually start out with things like attendance, things like discipline, and then how they met like DSIP and CSIP goals and some of the stuff throughout the year that they're doing.
Yeah, I ended that when I became president. The meetings just got too long. I think that was kind of the consensus, and I don't know that anybody
So
ever
the board
complained about
decided
it.
to end that?
What's that?
The board decided to end that?
When I became president, that's when we ended it. So probably a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Somewhere in that.
Yep. Slow on that. All right, discussion items, years of experience.
All right, years of experience. We have had a policy for years of experience, regulation 4505, which was also policy 4505, where we have acknowledged up to 10 years of experience for a teacher coming in to the salary schedule. We're in a position, in order to be competitive, other districts are raising that too. So pretty much left all the policy language the same, except we've extended that to 20 years. After that 20-year mark for a brand new employee, then anything above and beyond that, we would come to you as administration and discuss honoring years over 20. For a staff member returning to the district, we would honor those previous years plus the 20, and anything over that, we would come to the board for approval. We would be taking a look at honoring that because we didn't do that for a lot of our current staff when they came in. That'll cost us, in order to get us flush, will cost us about $8,000 a year to go ahead and get those folks where they should be on the salary scale. And we surveyed for that last year to get a general idea of who came in behind their actual years of experience and where they would be at.
Questions, comments?
I agree, we should do that. Like you said, agree with what you said, everything there.
Okay. Do we need to first read anything on that, or is that a?
This is the first
First
read.
read.
I can go ahead and read it.
Okay.
As written. Experienced teachers who are new to the school district may receive up to 20 years credit for previous experience. If a teacher is taught previously in the district, he or she will receive credit for all those years within this district, plus up to 20 years for experience in other districts. Teachers accruing more than 20 years of experience in either circumstance may be awarded credit beyond 20 years at the discretion of the Board of Education.
All right, very good. First read. Oh, the Bus procedure.
So I outlined the vast majority of the decision board's points in my board brief. Our default decision-making would be to accommodate any request we're capable of. In this case, I believe the opportunity to do something nice is outweighed by administrative prudence and the risk involved with making this decision in line with federal and state laws. And actually, our own policy language prohibits us, and the operational burdens associated with accommodating the requests for all families on a daily basis. On an additional thought, managing and coordinating this continuously for 600 families, there's no way that our office staff won't sacrifice, because we can't just make one exception, especially for this case in terms of a religious accommodation. We would need to open that up to anyone that would make a request to get off at a different bus stop. That puts us in a position to accommodate 600-ish family schedules on a daily basis. I don't think that's operationally prudent. We did do it in the past. That was in direct violation of our own board policy.
Well, like, did we have a deluge of requests?
Back
Before.
then?
Yeah, like, I assume this is just this year, right? We changed this year.
We actually started this last year. We were pretty inconsistent in its application. We didn't figure that out till March or April. But at March and April, you're about to finish up the school year. We said, you know what, our families have gotten used to it. Let's start next year with this, which is why I sent out the communication to families with that guidance at the beginning of the year. And then our bus drivers made an exception week 1 or 2. We found out about that, resent out, and then that's kind of how we got here.
But I just mean that we have a lot of requests before.
In previous
Hey,
years, yeah.
hey, since you dropped them off at St. George, will you drop me off at fill in the blank? Did we get a lot of that?
We had them daily in our elementary office for the most part, because high school kids just catch a ride
Right,
with somebody
right,
else,
right.
but daily.
But we did have a lot of that.
A significant
respect,
amount.
okay.
So when did we change the policy? Or, I mean, is this the current policy? How
Well,
long-
our current transportation policy has been in place for a really long time.
So we
but
just haven't enforced it?
We have
the
not
entire-
enforced it.
That's because it was very, very
I was gonna
clear.
say, like,
It's
Yeah,
very
I
I
clear
don't remember
that
changing this policy at all.
Yeah.
I just want to
The
say
way
that,
it's
like-
written actually strictly prohibits.
anything religious related.
From a procedural guideline, it opens you up. For instance, we had an elementary student that was dropped off at grandma's week 1 that really shouldn't have. Bus driver just trying to do a nice thing. Mom didn't realize that grandma forgot that they were gonna be dropped off there. It took us about an hour between Rudolph Bus Company and us to figure out what the breakdown was, but eventually got mom and grandma. That is our responsibility because we're guided by state statute, I think it's 167, don't quote me on this, .230 if memory, and policy only to go to domicile and back. So that really is on us. We had one of our contracted companies let a student off despite our guidance. So if anything happens to the kid, it is on us.
So what does the state statute say?
It says that we are required to provide transportation to and from school from where the student lives. I'm paraphrasing there again, but where they live, which in state statute is domicile, is our residency requirement, so where they lay their head at night. I admit that we did it for years, but when you look at our own policy, and there are districts that do something like this. They don't have it only for one place. You don't want to do that because now you're picking winners and losers, so to speak. If you want to go to this particular place, that would be like, we have some folks that were doing music lessons there by Dave's. We would be endorsing and promoting whomever was giving the music lessons if we only allowed students to go there, despite the fact that they're not necessarily connected with the school district.
The only thing I can remember in the last few years is a daycare that wanted an accommodation.
I remember that one.
We do daycares. And we even do daycares as defined by state law, which says that a family member, it's over and above, it's below a certain number that provides daycare on a daily basis, does not have to be licensed, but is in fact considered a daycare. So we wrote our guidelines and procedures around the state definition of daycare.
Kid going home with another kid,
like on the bus that doesn't have it?
Stopped that years ago, as I understand it. We had, like, you know, sleepover at, the Jameses, and 5 or 6 people would go there. We haven't done that I'm aware of since we've been here.
Everybody's gonna have an opinion, so who wants to start?
So I'm not.
Or questions?
I'm not really familiar with the St. George programs. I don't know if it's just an after-school, I don't know to ask this. I don't know if it's just an after-school,
It's once a week.
once-a-week program.
It's PSR, it stands for Public School Religion, so, and to prepare for confirmation, they give classes
Okay.
to those students in that age group.
So I didn't know if that would be like some kind of after-school program where you could work that as a, it's not a daycare, but it's like an actual established program, or?
To me, I would hope we wouldn't look at it as a parochial thing or not. I
Right.
think the larger question is, if a student has any class, and I think it's good to go to, like, if they had music lessons, say somebody opened up and was giving private music lessons at the old high school, let's just say that. Are we willing to say, if you have music lessons or batting lessons, or you want to join a running group, then you just make your request in the office, and then we're responsible for making sure that you get there.
Is there not a way that we could, if we have advanced written notice from the parents and the kid's going at an already established bus stop? I mean-
If it's already
Not
it's
an
already
extra
a
stop,
state-
We're
it's a
not-
stop we already make anyway.
I,
Not adding.
as long as, this can't be something where like it's changed the morning of. This would have to be an advance notice, hey,
Wait.
Timmy's gotta go to this, and where he's getting off at an existing stop. And additionally, in the cases that we're discussing, it's not an elementary school kid, it's an older kid, but like, I would think if we have explicit written consent from the parents, I would think that it doesn't matter if it's a religious thing or not. I would think that we should be able to, we're already going there, and on the exact same bus. That's why I feel like, I realize that there's,
I think the what it is should be taken out of the equation.
I think
Yeah.
so too.
It just needs to say, if it can't be a new stop,
Right.
they can't decide, oh, I
Can't
wanna
switch
be
buses to
dropped
get
off
there.
at the square. It's as a stop that we make every day anyway, they're not changing buses. I don't have a problem with that.
Keep in mind, the prior notice only changes when we're notified. It doesn't change any other risk factor, doesn't change state.
Right.
None of that's changed. Instead of uploading the request on the day that it would happen, we're uploading that day's request at T-10 and the second day's request at T-9. So all we do is backload it to make sure the last 10 days of school, let's just say it was 2 weeks, 8 days, the last 8 days of school, we aren't getting requests. All the rest, from 2 weeks prior to school starting to 2 weeks within school ending, we're taking requests to accommodate family travel schedules. That's pretty tough.
Who else got an opinion or has a question? We could talk about this all night.
Yeah, I think there's always gonna be extra variables, but if it's something multiple kids are going to, it's not I don't know.
It's a benefit to our students.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about switching up going to grandma's and Aunt Susie's. It's
This feels like a different.
It's different,
Scenario.
yes.
So in talking with superintendents, this is kind of a gray area because school boards approve bus routes, right? But do they approve riderships and all the operational stuff? No. So I would still say that my administrative guidance is that we would need to have a vote to override that.
No doubt about that.
Well, I'm interested in the state statute, to what it really says. I'm not
I think
very
I have a
interested
copy
in
of it.
violating the state statute.
So it's 167 point 231. It says the statute refers to the obligation of districts to provide transportation to those living more than 3.5 miles from the school. And then I wrote expounded. I just took the inclusion of the word living implies that districts are obligated to provide transportation to and from students' domiciles or home addresses. We do provide that service with a few exceptions: communal bus stops, daycare facilities licensed and otherwise identified by the state, and those students living in 2 homes as part of a custody agreement. So I just have that one part.
Isn't that where we would be going in this case, a communal bus stop?
It is.
Yeah, it's in this definition.
167 what?
231?
167.231. Our own policy regulation, only those students who meet eligibility requirements by means of residence will be permitted to use school bus transportation for the purpose of travel to and from school.
I additionally think that if these kids are going to a communal bus stop in the middle of town, and that reduces a few more cars from coming onto our campus at the end of school, it actually works into our favor because that's a few less people entering our campus when it's already crowded.
Keep in mind, we're not just talking about that one bus stop. In order to make this not violate some federal law, we need to apply that to any bus stop that we have on any route.
Because not all of them will stop at the Catholic Church, and now you run the risk that, I don't know how many of them will stop at the Catholic Church, and we all know that's what really backs up traffic.
And I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse here, but policy 5670 also states, and this is our own policy, school buses will be used only for transportation of students to and from or for district educational purposes. It's just one after another. And we will need to take a look and do some rewrites of that policy based on this decision.
Yeah, but this is from, this would be from school. I mean, you can categorize it that, it's just, you know, what I mean, it's like, it's not a domicile, but it is certainly from school, we could be under that umbrella. I would read it that way, I would see that.
What do we have school lawyers for?
Yeah, I know what they're gonna say. They're gonna say, don't do it. You're opening yourself up to litigation by dropping a kid off somewhere other than their home. I mean, that's an easy one.
Honestly, it's an easy yes. We can do something nice, but I feel like my job as an administrator is to guide you on policy and law, kind of 6-finger test it. Are we breaking federal law, state law, board policy, establishing a dangerous precedent, an unsafe condition, or something that's unsustainable with our resources? I think this, if we would only do it for St. George or any church that wasn't providing a daycare, would flirt with violating federal law. If you look at 167.231, we're flirting with state law. We're definitely violating our own policy, and it's establishing a
So
precedent.
what if they didn't say they were being dropped off at PSR and they were being dropped off at after-school care? Does that
gets
change
us
it?
1 out of 4. We still have state statute, our own policy.
I'm just saying it's a daycare. I'm just bringing up something that
St. George does offer extended care.
they have extended care. If there were kids here in elementary that had to get off at St. George for extended care,
We would let them.
we would let
We do
them.
currently do that.
Exactly, that's why I don't understand.
She's saying, what difference does it make whether my kid's going to PSR or going to extended care after school at St. George?
Because
Well,
our
a couple
policy is
things. It
explicit.
doesn't violate policy. It doesn't establish a dangerous precedent. It is flirting with 167.231, which is why we had the board vote on daycares last year. Which is why I would suggest if we would do it, it would not be anything specific to PSR. It would be carte blanche. You can get off at any stop, and we're going to manage 600 families and 9 bus routes. And anything that we're willing to do, I think we should advertise the service because we want everybody to take advantage of it, right? And I can't unknow the purpose of the request. I can't do that. The way I make my living is tied directly to not doing that.
Okay, other questions?
I need to read this a little closer, but it kind of says that we have some kind of leeway on a lot of this with 167, 231. Basically, we can make some decisions on that, so I need to read it closer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not reading it that you can't do it. It's saying we have to give them transportation to and from, but it doesn't say we
It
can't
doesn't
do
say
other
we
things.
can't
Make
do
the
other,
adjustments.
Yeah,
it
I
just
would
says
tend
we
to,
have to do
tend to
it.
agree with that, but.
It's as easy as a board vote, but we gotta understand that whatever comes from it, we gotta live up later on. In any one instance, one kid gets hurt, one kid gets lost, one kid gets picked up by the wrong person, we've said it in
Yeah.
open
So
forum.
if anyone
Reliable forum.
wants to make a motion, second it, you're more than welcome to do it. I'm gonna be a no vote on it, but if somebody wants to do that, you're welcome to do that. It's to change policy. It'd be to make an exception now and then, direct Bob to rewrite the policy.
Dr. Stone, I have a question just for my own understanding, and it's probably a better question for the superintendent. Are we talking about potentially putting kids on different buses on different days of the week, or are we talking about the bus that they're already on stopping at a different stop potentially if it doesn't normally stop there?
In this case, for the people who spoke in open forum, that same bus, same route.
But for all of the kids that go to that program and the parents aren't necessarily here, do they all stay on the same bus on the same route, do you know?
They do.
Okay.
Which is an advantage if you, now we have 1 out of 9 buses, that's actually a good point. We have 1 out of 9 buses that we afford this convenience, the other 8 do
Don't
not.
stop at St. George.
Yeah, you don't get that.
It seems to me that if you allow that and you have kids that are going to, if we say music lessons, to use what you used before, if the music lesson isn't on their normal bus route, then you have to make a decision as to whether you put that kid on a different bus that day and the bus driver has to know that they're gonna have that kid on that day, or you send a bus that doesn't normally stop there to that location.
I don't want to violate our board meeting structure by continuing, if that makes sense. But that's the reason why I'm not saying that you don't make a good point. That's kind of what I was alluding to before.
That's just a question for my understanding.
Okay, so if nobody makes a motion, then, and we don't direct him otherwise, I mean, I don't think we tell him to willfully violate our school policy. I think the motion's gotta be we change school policy. Do we wanna argue that point or not?
Kind of makes me wonder if we could look into it a little bit more.
Right, and without reading what the
Not anything
statute
else.
is.
Table it and discuss it again next month or something, I don't know. So you talked to other superintendents?
Yep.
Some
There's
of
a
them-
mix.
Some of them do it, some of them don't.
Not for PSR. Some of them allow what I would call like bus hopping, like you can just switch busing. Some of them don't.
So that's the catch of the bus hopping?
Well, changing anywhere that we would drop a kid off, other than their residence, would fall into a category of opening us up to
All that.
risk, yeah.
So that's the main catch is you don't want them, they can't go, they have to go home and they cannot go somewhere else.
It places us in a position to manage 600 family schedules for after-school activities that aren't really related to our school at all.
It does say the school board can create, I don't know what the wording was, but it was like reasonable rules for that. Is there something that we could do where if they want to do that, they have to address the board or get it approved through the board or something like that, another policy? And you said are other schools doing it, that other districts that are doing it, are they just not paying attention to laws, is what you're saying?
In some cases, I would agree that what you'll find most often is different school districts are comfortable with different levels of risk and different levels of liability. So you have some schools that go, we know every family in the district, no one's no one's gonna, sue us for anything. And still, you have other school districts say, well, it doesn't matter, we can't take that risk with
Those ones that are
taxpayer
just
money.
doing it, I'm just asking if there's policy that they're using in place and just letting them just go wherever.
So
That's what I'm asking.
You're also gonna see a range of policies from very kind of 50,000 foot that just says, something that gives campuses or superintendents a great deal of latitude. The superintendent shall establish guidelines and procedures for ridership and transportation, all the way down to a very, this isn't seems like it's a negative word, but I don't mean it that way, micromanagey, like they're really tight and say exactly how we're gonna do it, if I understand your question.
Kind of like our policy.
What's
I mean,
that?
our policy is pretty tight, but we haven't enforced it,
I
which
would
is
say it's in the
problematic.
middle. Yeah.
Okay.
I would say it's in the middle, slightly on the tight side.
Okay, last chance, or we'll table it until next month.
I'm trying to write what I would wanna move.
Just keep, whatever we do, we're gonna have to, if we do anything, we've gotta change our policy. We can't continue we can't willfully violate our own policy. I mean, that is opening yourself up to litigation if a student would get hurt and you go back to your policy and it says, well, they shouldn't have done it in the first place, and we willfully let them do it.
I'm just curious, I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Not supposed to.
Oh, well, so I'm just curious what you said earlier. So, like, you guys are responsible for the kids from the time they leave here till the time they get home?
From the time we drop them off at our nexus, which is the bus stop.
Stop, okay. I was gonna say, 'cause, yeah, how do you know that they get to where they're supposed to be? But you don't really.
Once we drop them off at a bus stop, they could go straight into the woods.
Well,
Mhm.
another option
And
says
part
there
of it's-
that it can be paid for by the student's parents. A shuttle, I hate to say it, but the shuttle paid for by St. George.
Yeah, they contract with Rudrop Bus Services just the same way we do. If they wanted a bus to take to PSR or whatever, a van, then they could absolutely do that.
That would be a backup option.
We accommodate that, not so much here, but school districts will have daycares that kind of show up, especially to elementaries, and kind of take kids directly to that. And even churches I've seen that have ministries after school send vans and buses to schools that take them to after-school programs. That's a good point, actually.
That was in 167-231 outlines the section 3 talks about that. I didn't get to read real close. I hate having to do that.
So in that's the state statute. The state statute refers to communal bus stops. I don't think that our policy, I don't have internet access. I don't know how it's written in our policy, but.
Well, you guys voted on our bus routes, and our bus routes contain communal bus stops, so that is a board-approved stop based on that.
Gonna come up with anything, Mark, or are we moving on, tabling until next month? I wouldn't mind looking at some other school districts, seeing what districts around us do, that type of thing,
Okay.
but I'm not gonna stop you either.
Well, I don't wanna move something in haste and it not jive with our policies.
From a sentiment standpoint, I want to say yes. I mean, we're just helping folks out. But as your administrator, I cannot let sentiment guide. I have to do the 6-finger test, federal law, state law, board policy, and the others. And when you go down the line, I'm not comfortable assuming the risk or advising that we do.
Okay, 7:25, we're moving on. You got 1 minute.
That's fine.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it next month.
Will each of you reach out through email or telephone and tell me what you'd like to see, and I can pull stuff for you? If you see anything that's interesting from your side, send it to me, because I'm not the only one that can do some Googling and.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Parking lot options.
Our second most popular, I did get this yesterday. The way it was presented, I felt like it was a bit confusing, so I kind of reorganized it and put it in hard copy format for you. There are essentially two different parking lots. When I refer to the northwest parking lot, that's that little circle by the pre-K drop-off over by the long jump pits. The southwest option is where we've cleared, right there at the end of Wildcat Drive. So in our original proposal, when we were going out for bond, we kind of thought, it's gonna be about 600,000 to do those two. And as presented, we could do those two. We would get about 50 or 60 spots in the northwest option, and we would get up maybe a little bit more, about 65 spots or so in the southwest option. But we lose about 50 spots by putting our building across the end of the parking lot. So just do the math, we lose about 50, we pick up about 110, 115, so we would only be spending 600,000 to pick up about 50 or 60 spots. In looking at our budget, I think we have the potential to do more than that considering our parking woes. And so there are two options that you'll see right on the front, and those are the northwest or the pre-K parking lot. There was a third option. That third option actually would require us to move our long jump pits, and considering how much work we've done on those, I didn't want to do that. And it would put a row of parking right outside of right field, which I think would be a great baseball magnet. And so the smaller option yields, I think it's 52 spots. That's awfully small now. The option to the right is about 345,000. That will yield about 120 spots. Requires the least amount of grading. Our complication there is right down that middle row going directly north-south. We have a drainage ditch, so we would have to build that out. That would probably be the majority of our expense there. For the southwest lot, there are in effect about three options. What I'll call the light pole option is our light pole over that grassy area, right over the end of Wildcat Drive. That was originally planned as a parking lot years ago. It never came to fruition, but that light pole area will yield us about 60 to 70 parking spaces as it currently sits. We could get an additional 50 or so if we were to place head-in parking directly along where our student parking is now, and we could pick up another 41 spaces if we chose to put a smaller parking lot at that lower elevation. My personal preference would be the 120 space option for our northwest lot. And
Which one is that?
That would be the larger option on the front page.
How much money? 210?
That's
For the
345 as presented.
That doesn't get cars too close to the long jump pit?
No, we should be fine there.
All right.
And then if we did our 68 parking space option right underneath the light pole, that would give us 188, or approximately, we would net 133 parking spaces. Just looking at our events earlier this year, when we had our first home football game, we were able to accommodate only because of the rain. Second home football game, I felt like we had a decent crowd, and if you took all the people that didn't park in a parking space and put them in a parking space, we were about flush, maybe about 10 or so spaces short. That doesn't consider however many folks were parked over at the Lions Club and coming through that northern gate. So I think we need somewhere around 100 spots to be real comfortable housing everybody over here. Probably closer to 150. If we're gonna have a varsity football game and a varsity volleyball game in one night, especially if we're playing a Fatima, we need about 150 more parking spaces to accommodate everybody over here. I think that's the closest, And then we could look at a couple different options. That little 40 space parking lot that's on the lower level, I've been referring to as the future 40. I think we could run our pass-through road there and pick up an additional 40 spaces, which would put us at about the 160, 170 mark. 120 real fast here in the next year, and then an additional 40 or 50 as we continue to bring in some fill and level out the future 40 spot. None of these options are cheap. We talked a little bit about that today.
So, you know, as I look at them, I mean, and I said, well, this is all paved, was my first question to Bob, and he said, no, this is just gravel. So
It's just
I
gravel.
do think our engineers are using St. Louis numbers. I don't think they've adjusted to rural Missouri. I mean, these are stupid numbers in my opinion. But that said, I mean, if we can wait a year, if it's gravel, State Tech can probably do a lot of it. If we can wait a year to a year and a half, but if we need to do it now, we've got way too many things going on.
One of the
But-
great things, it's gonna take us about a year to finish up, once we get started with the new addition. I do think we have a year to work on some things. If a partnership would, maybe the difference in cost would yield maybe an asphalted light pole parking lot and a gravel below, or, you know, we shoot for the stars and be able to get, asphalt in both, would be awesome.
I am curious how much fill we get, because I mean, the way they've drawn out the 880,000 option, it's basically doing what we have right now, not considering that we've already filled in some of this that they're not accounting for.
We've had about 100 loads brought in. I'm gonna reach out to Lions Club this week, because I've ordered a banner that I'd like to put down on the fence that just says fill needed, and we'll put another one at the end of the drive. With a year, hard telling,
Might fill it up.
we could fill out the light pole
Yeah.
area and maybe get 100 spaces out of that.
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of room there, potentially.
Even if we were to only do that, that's 220 spaces gross. That's 165 spaces, 175 spaces net, based on a 55 loss.
I mean, Northwest option 2 makes a whole lot of sense to proceed with that, correct?
Yes.
We all in agreement on that?
Yes.
Okay. And then beyond that, my gut feeling is, unless you need parking right now, I mean,
Sit tight.
let's work towards a road at least, but then let's kind of hold tight on the parking and see what happens in the next year, if you're okay with that.
Yep, I think we can live with it now. I would love to have more people parking spaces, but I could live, if it gets our dollar that much further by waiting a year and seeing what we get for fill, I think that's a good trade.
We all good with that?
So you're saying wait a year for.
Kind of kicking the can, but I mean, work towards Northwest option 2.
I'm sure I got that one.
And then see what happens in a year if we get enough fill.
I mean, honestly, I mean, what you're really gonna do, you're gonna pull the topsoil off of Northwest parking 2, and there's probably bad soil under the gravel road too. So you take all that and then bring rock back in, dump it all in the hole over here.
No, I think that's a good idea.
I mean, Lori, these look like MoDOT numbers to me.
Can you redirect 3,000 loads of fill dirt our way?
I mean, as far as just the cost, looks
Right.
insane to me.
Yeah, it's a bit high.
For not being paved.
For not being paved.
For
it's
not
high,
being
yeah.
paved, yeah, that's nuts. Yeah, when we have a rock plant a mile away. Okay, so do you need anything more from us on that?
Nope.
Anybody else want to have any more discussion?
You might reach out to some of the quarries and see about, because they have to scab off all of the extra material from the quarry. Sometimes they just need to get rid of it. So you might be able to get them to offload it out here.
Because it's us.
Because it's us.
Because it's
Mhm.
Lennar too. Yeah. Sounds good. So we probably should publicly thank Casper's for the,
Absolutely. Casper's dug 2 tanks, one 70-foot, one 30-foot over behind their store, and we got about 100 loads of fill is
They're
what
big
he seems
loads.
to- Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dirt that was brought down here in the last couple weeks. Also, Aplex, Ronnie Helmig over there has been working to spread it and kind of give us some ideas of, you know, what we could do as far as that down ramp. So I think we've got a good start. If we get about 100 loads a month, that would be great.
Mhm. So we need 1,000 loads. All right, moving on. CD Mid-Missouri Bank.
So it's our time to renew our CD from Mid-Missouri Bank. Got some rates there that were posted by Mid-America. We're currently, I believe, our CD is at 4.5%. Does that sound right, Mark?
The current CD?
Yeah.
No, that current one, this one that is renewing is at 0.45%.
I thought that maybe the decimal place. I thought it was
Mistake.
4.5%.
We
Yeah.
renewed
I
those
really
other
did.
ones for a better rate. But this one was we didn't touch it because it was maturing in September.
Gotcha.
What do you recommend?
Well, anything's better than 0.45. You know, I would say it would be personal preference. So prime rate just went down 0.5% yesterday. And so I do think that if we wait any longer, rates on CDs additionally will trail and go down. So my guess is that we would want to do something, the CD that is renewing next week is a 36-month CD. So I would probably either renew it again at another 36 months, or I just pulled this off our rate sheet, and 25 months was a hair better at 3.45. But honestly, either of those would be fine. I think CD rates are on the way down, and so the longer that we can lock in a rate, the better. So I would suggest either 25 or 36.
I'm gonna ask a stupid question. Is this money reserve money? Is that what it is? I mean, it's not
Yes.
money we're gonna touch.
No, I don't plan
Okay.
on touching it. We won't be remotely close to touching our CD money. We could throw a lot more in there, actually.
Okay. Does anybody care?
I think
What
by
do
the
you wanna do?
time rates drop, we've blown by the 7 and the 9 month. I think 15 months puts you right in a position where we're probably negotiating. We'll get 4.2 for that, but we'll probably negotiate for less than the 3.5 that we could get at 25 months. And so if you really wanted to keep it producing, it's a choice between 25 months and 36 months
Mhm.
at 3.3 and 3.5. If we want to just keep on the same cycle, then that would be the 36 months at 3.3 would be what I would recommend. Hard telling where we'll be in 25 months, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't-
Whatever you wanna do. I mean, I don't care. Does anybody? So.
We
what
are
do you wanna do?
playing the market.
I mean, like Mark said, anything's better than
Right.
0.45.
I like to be conservative and play the long game. So
Okay.
I would say, my
3
money,
years.
I'm going 36 months at 3.3, and now I'm drop proof for 3 years.
Okay, let's do it. Anybody opposed? Do we need to vote on that? It doesn't call for it, but.
Nope, we just,
Okay.
we'll let it run.
It's
Okay.
honestly gonna renew at that, so.
Okay, perfect. All right, we need to mileage rate.
So mileage rates for parents as teachers, sorry, it says PTA there, it should say PAT. We've had the same reimbursement rate for mileage for our parents as teachers for at least 7 years at 40 cents. I did do a little bit of legwork. We have 2 reimbursement rates for staff. If the district vehicle was unavailable, we pay 40 cents a mile. If it was available, but you choose to drive your own POV, your own car, personally owned vehicle, then it's 25 cents. So our 40 cents is in line with that. However, I would still recommend considering we maybe increase both. And because 50 and 60 cents is pretty typical, and we are also competing with our districts that are next to us, and I know for a fact it's 50 cents at Chamois at the very least, because they were asking if we would be interested in sharing services. They actually pay 20% more than we do. On a completely different note, so I would like for you to consider that. On a completely different note, when you take a look at our reimbursement rates, they're, even for meals, are 15, 10, and 5. Dinner, lunch, and breakfast, and you can't eat at McDonald's for $10 anymore. And so I think if we do that separately, I'd like to bring that back and change our reimbursement rates. And I can just do a simple calculation, if that's an area that we're interested in, and bring it back to you. I'll present some new rates, maybe 20, 15, and 8. Then I'll just run the numbers. What did we reimburse for last year? What would the cost be? What would the impact to the budget be? But I think for parents as teachers, it'll be a nominal impact to our budget to increase that to 50
I mean,
cents.
the 50 cents makes perfect sense. My only concern with the other would be if you go up to 50 cents, hey, I'd be incentivized to drive my own car. And you're really not trying to do that. You're trying to incentivize them to drive a district car.
The only way they get 50 cents on reimbursement is if the district vehicles were available and they
And they
just
didn't check it.
chose
Yeah,
to drive theirs. But if they weren't, then,
which is why you have it way down to 25 cents now,
right,
to try to keep folks from using their own car.
sure.
Yep. Yeah, I don't have a problem with 50 cents for the parents and teachers.
No.
Is that what you're wanting us to vote on today?
Yes, sir, I
50 cents.
appreciate that.
Can I have a motion?
I move we increase the mileage rate for parents as teachers to 50 cents per mile.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, the same. All right, motion passes. Next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be October 17th of 2024. Could I get a motion to adjourn to closed session?
We'll be adjourned to closed session pursuant of RSMO 610.021 ASD subsection 13 relative to personally identifiable employment information.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Brad?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Naomi?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Brett?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We are adjourned to closed session.